In this Go Byte, we're going to have a look at basic functions and we're going to write some of our own. So up until now, we have been using functions, but they're ones which are built into Go. So we have the main function, which has a special meaning in Go. And then we've been using this print line function to just print out when we want to view our code, view variables and see what values they hold, and we've been using that in the previous lessons. And so functions, what they do is they enable you to reuse pieces of code that you're going to want to use throughout your project. So if we go and follow the trace back on this print line function, it actually calls another function under the hood which does all of these things here. And so as you can see, doing this is a lot more convenient than having to do this everywhere. And that is the biggest benefit that functions give you. They enable you to reuse blocks of code throughout your app. And so we can create handy little convenient functions which can do quite a lot of things, but without us having to repeat that code everywhere. Because you can imagine if we decided that we wanted this to work a little bit differently in the future, then we'd have to go all throughout our code and start changing lots of lines. But if we just have one function where it can be reused, then all you'd need to do is just go and find that function and just change the line or change the parts that you want to change out of that functionality. So like I say, that's what we're going to do in this one. We're going to create our own custom function. So it's going to be fairly simple, but it'll show you how to do it, how to create a function, what the syntax is and how they work. So we're going to just print one which will, or we're just going to create one which will just print out your name or print hello followed by a provided name. Now the way that we create a function or declare a function is pretty much like we've seen here. We use the func keyword, then we need to follow it with a name. So here we're just going to call this greet, and then you can pass any parameters that you want to use in your function. So here what we'll have is we'll have a name, and you must also provide a type. So the name is going to be a string, and if you wanted more than one, then what you would do is you would use a comma and then pass your next parameter. But we're just going to have one here, and then what this is going to do is just going to print out hello followed by your name. So we'll go and cut that from there, paste that in there, and so we want hello followed by a space followed by the name. So what we can do here is we can use the parameters which are part of the signature. So this line here in any function, the one where you declare using the func keyword followed by the name followed by the list of arguments, this is called the signature. Okay, so here we're just going to take the name which is passed in as a parameter, and then now that we've declared this function, we can actually go and use it inside this main block here. So here I'm just going to say greet, and I'll pass my name. And so what we expect to see here, because this function is actually going to call this print line function under the hood, then we should see hello Gary printed out. Go run main.go hello Gary. Okay, so this one just printed something out, but you can actually have functions which return a value. And so what that means is you could store a return value from this function in a variable. So we'll do one of those functions also, and we'll use some maths on this one. So func, I'll just call this square, and it will take a integer. So we'll just give this a variable name of n for number. That will be an integer, and we're also going to return an integer from here. So you also specify your return types. And all this is going to do is we're going to obtain the square of a number. So we're just going to multiply this by itself, which in turn should return another integer. And so we're expecting an integer to come back from this, which we can store in a variable. So the keyword that we use to get a value back from a function is return. So here we're going to say return n, multiplied using the asterisk n. And then now we can go and use this. So like I say, we're going to get a value back. So we'll say result using the short declaration syntax, and then we are going to store the result of this call to the square function, and we'll just pass the number 4. And then all we're going to do is we're going to use another function, print line, just to print out that result. So let's think what we expect to happen here. We're passing in the number 4 to the square function. The square function is going to take that number 4 and multiply it by itself, getting a value of 16 for this, but then it's also going to return it. And so what that means is we can store the returned result in a variable. We could call a variable anything that we like, and then we're going to print that out. All right, so let's go and run this. I'm expecting to see 16 printed to my terminal, and that's what we get. Okay, time for a challenge. Here, write another function called double that takes an integer and returns twice its value. And then in your main function, just call double, pass in a number, so 4 if you like, and then print the result using format print line. So not doing anything that you haven't already just seen. I'm sure you can do this. Pause me now and give that a go. Okay, so always have a go at the challenges, because me explaining it and you doing it are two completely different things, and you won't believe the kind of daft mistakes you make when you've not actually practiced. So func double, it will take an integer, so we can call that n, but you can call it what you like, the name doesn't matter, and then that's going to be an integer. And if we're going to times something by 2, if we're going to double something, it's going to return an integer, so we can say that that is our return type. And then it is the opening curly brackets, and then we're just going to return n multiplied by 2. So that might look simple, it might seem simple watching me doing it, but like I say, doing it yourself is a completely different thing. All right, let's go and run this. So here we're going to just say we need to store this in a variable, so we'll call the variable result again, and then double, and then 4. So let's print this out. Result. Always talk what you expect to see here. We are calling double, passing in 4. What does double do? It takes the number which is passed in, multiplies it by 2, which according to my maths means that we should get 8, and then it is returning that value. We can store the value in a result variable, and we are printing that out. So we should see 8 printed out here. Let's go and run this. Okay, and that is what we get. How did you get on with that one? Hope you gave it a go. Using basic functions is an important step to get over, because we're going to use a lot of functions in Go going forward. They're going to get a lot more complex, and we're going to start using things like receiver functions and all different kinds of functions which do all different kinds of things. So now that we've got this first initial introduction out the way, we should be able to do some pretty cool stuff. Okay, so give the video a like if you've enjoyed this. Make sure that you're subscribed, and if you have a friend that's learning Go, why not share this with them and get them off to a start with functions also.